We're recording the interview of John Foltz. This interview is being recorded by Ericka Carter from the Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University in the New Media Incubator. It is 2:19 p.m., November 14, 2019. How are you today, John?
I'm doing fine, Ericka, thank you.
Fantastic. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Columbus, Ohio, May 21st, 1944.
Oh, so you're right around this area.
Yes.
That's fantastic. That's not often we have somebody that we interview that's from this area natively. Who were your parents and where were they born?
My parents were Glenn and Marie Foltz. My mother was born in Westerville, Ohio. My dad was born in Carroll County, Ohio. And they met in the early 1930s and started a family. I was the oldest of three. I had a younger brother, 18 months younger than I am, who's predeceased. And I have a younger sister who lives in Delaware, Ohio.
What were your parents' jobs?
With their names?
Jobs. What were their occupations?
My mother was pretty much of a housewife, although she did work part-time in the local school cafeteria and in the local college cafeteria for a number of years. And my father was an agricultural engineer and worked for the Ohio Farm Bureau and other business entities that serviced Ohio Farm Bureau. Did
he go to school for that?
Yes, he did. He was graduated from Ohio State University in the early 30s as an agricultural engineer. My mother had a high school education. Okay.
I've interviewed somebody else that had that same, that went to school for that and had that same kind of title, and it's like Farmer Doe, a little bit more so. That's really neat.
Yeah, the Ohio Farm Bureau was a statewide organization that had members from the various county co-ops, Franklin County Co-op, Montgomery, Preble County Co-ops, that was a central buying, a central depository of information and service company to the county co-ops.
Your younger sister, brother, did they serve in the military at all?
Yeah, my brother served 20 plus years in the Air Force and retired as a major.
And your dad did not? Any other?
No, he did not. He was not eligible. He was not physically fit to serve during World War II, although he did work in a defense plant in actually Westerville, making fuses for bombs. And my mother worked in an aircraft plant in Columbus, wiring Hellcats. So she called it Curtiss Wright, but years later it was North American and then Rockwell. So she was a Rosita Riveter.
Wow.
So
that's pretty neat.
Very proud of her.
Yeah, okay, awesome. So when did you join the military? What year?
I joined the Marine Corps, enlisted in September of 1965 in Denver, Colorado. The reason in Denver, Colorado is I took a job working at a lodge in the mountains out near Estes Park, Colorado. And so Denver was my enlistment city of enlistment, even though my address of record was Westerville.
In high school, did you have any hobbies or sports or things like that you were interested in that you did?
Yeah, I played the usual Little League and Pony League baseball and pickup games here and there. Participated in various activities in high school, so it was a good situation back then.
What made you want to join the military?
I was a little bit angry at some situations that I had in my life. College wasn't working out for me very well, and I was doing jobs waiting on tables in a resort in a seasonal situation. And I just recall that I had uncles, mostly uncles on my mother's side of the family, that served during World War II. One uncle, my mother's brother, was a Marine, served in the South Pacific during the war, and always admired those fellas and knew that they had gone through something fairly extraordinary and never really talked about it until I sat down with one uncle who had lost part of his leg a couple of weeks after D-Day, and learned more about their service and sacrifice. And so it just came to a point I just thought, I think I want to be a Marine. So I went down to the recruiting office, walked in, and this big, tall gunnery sergeant, I'll never forget his name, Gunnery Sergeant Queen, said, "Son, step over here."
How'd that make you feel? I sense there's a sense of pride about you.
A lot of anticipation, not knowing what was ahead of me, knowing it was going to be a difficult road, that it was not going to be a bed of roses, and said, "This is what I got to do," knowing full well that at some point I would probably at that juncture wind up in Vietnam.
How do your parents feel about this?
I'm sorry.
How did your parents feel about this?
Oh, my mother was. My dad never really said anything. My mother, however, said, what is wrong with you?" But I think also deep down in the years later, she was very proud, because when I came back from Vietnam in '68, I went back to school, and it was always, "Here's my son, he just came back from Vietnam, and oh, by the way, he's getting married and going back to school." So it turned out okay.
Okay.
For me and her, both.
Okay.
At that time, my brother was in the Air Force. Actually, he was stationed in Guam and with his family, so I didn't get to see him much over his career.
That sucks.
Yeah. So anyway, I came home when the season was over with in Colorado, came home for a little bit, saw my soon-to-be fiance, and went back to Denver and enlisted and went to San Diego boot camp, Marine Corps Recruit Depot in San Diego in 25th of September 1965.
How old were you?
I was 21 years old.
And you already had met the lady of your dreams?
Yes.
How'd you meet her?
We were high school sweethearts. We grew up in the same town.
Okay. Was the weather change, going from Denver to Ohio to Denver to California, was that a shocker for you?
Not really. That was kind of the least of my concerns. It was very, I enjoyed my time in the mountains in Colorado very much. So I did a lot of hiking and those kinds of things, a lot of outdoor activities. Learned to ride a horse. After one of them threw me, I learned what not to do. No, it's from a weather perspective, that wasn't necessary. I was just ready for a big adventure, and that's kind of one of the reasons I signed on.
How did your girlfriend at the time feel?
Didn't like it at all.
Okay.
She was like my mother. What were you thinking? What do you?
But she stuck by your side.
Yeah, she did. Okay. She did.
Okay. When did you guys get engaged?
I came home on leave in December of '67 because my brother was getting married and I wanted to be in his wedding. And then shortly after that, I returned to Vietnam, and it was during that Christmas, the wedding and all the celebration and so forth, we became engaged at that point. And we didn't get married until I came back. I got out in August of '68, and we got married in October of '68, so 2 months later.
Okay, so let's talk about basics. So you remember the gunnery sergeant that signed you up and this big guy, and then you get to basic training. Or is it called basic in the Marine Corps?
Or boot camp basic training.
Okay, boot camp.
I went back to Denver, and we got all our paperwork together. I believe there were 7 or 8 of us all together. Some of the names I can recall. There was, we all kind of looked at each other like, okay, what are we doing here? We got on an airplane in the evening, flew from there to Phoenix to San Diego. In the middle of the night, got off the airplane, and at the San Diego airport, there were a bunch of Navy recruits going to Navy boot camp at the same time. The Navy detachment showed up and said, "What are you guys doing here?" And we said, I had the service record books and the paperwork for all 7 or 8 of us. And he said, "Will you stay right here?" He said, "Sergeant so-and-so will be here soon." And soon after that, the bus pulled up, the school bus type vehicle pulled up, and we were instructed to get on the bus, sit down, keep your mouth shut, put your hands on your thighs, and look straight ahead. Because it wasn't our bus, it was his bus. So I said, you're now on my bus.
So
My bus.
it seems like I remember that same instruction. We had to put our head down though in our laps. We could not
we
look.
just look straight ahead.
Now, you had everybody's paperwork, so you were already assigned to be the leader.
Yeah. Yes.
Is that because you were the oldest person there?
Probably, and
Okay.
probably because I had a couple years of college.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure why. So receiving barracks, went and got off and nobody moved. You only move when I tell you to, and when I tell you to, I want everybody to hustle off the bus and put your feet in some yellow footprints. And every Marine since the beginning of time remembers yellow footprints that you will stand there at attention, and you will be taken in periodically to have your head shaved, because you will lose your identity. And not that I identified with my hair so much, but you know, that was the start. And then you went upstairs, packed all your civilian clothes in a box, sent them home, addressed it to your mommy, because you're not, you say goodbye to your mommy because I am now your mother. I am your father. Here's what we're going to do. And a very, very short night, and then our senior drill instructor, Sergeant Oscar Sick, S-Y-C-K. I'll never forget. And he didn't call us anything but people. You people will fall into formation. Here's how you're going to do it. And we marched off to our area with a bunch of other people, and our platoon, our recruit platoon, formed up, and it was the next 12 weeks, it was fun and games. I say that in quotation marks, fun and games.
Okay. Is there any particular story that stands out with you during your fun and games that you'd like to share?
Yes. I guess generally speaking, all of us learned to do things that we would probably never use again. Didn't think we would be able to do those things, both physically and mentally, especially the drill part, the physical activity, the physical training, those kinds of things that would prepare us for further training. And I just always recall when we graduated, we went to the big auditorium at MCRD San Diego. There was a Lieutenant Colonel Blanchard. There were some parents in the audience from some of the guys in our platoon plus 3 others. It was called a series. And they were attending their son's graduation from Marine boot camp. And he said, your sons have done something that they never thought they would do, did some things they may ever never use, never thought they could do, but they overcame, persevered, those kinds of things, and you should be duly proud. And now they're, be able to say that they are raw recruits in United States Marines.
Now, we get a lot of Air Force here because of our general location for our interviews.
Understand.
So interviewing a Marine, I have a few more questions for you personally.
Sure.
Were you an integrated group?
Yes.
Was everybody treated fairly?
Yes.
Were back in those times, so now is an age question, back in those times, were they able to hit you, or did they put their hands on you, or any of that?
Occasionally there was some physical touching. I have to say this, that our senior drill instructor, Sergeant Sick, was also assisted by 2 assistant drill instructors. One was African American and the other was Filipino.
Really?
So that was it was made very clear from the beginning that wherever you came from, forget it. Everybody wears green. Everybody. So.
Was there any, I can imagine, now when I think of a Marine, right, as an Army gal, when I think of a Marine, I don't think jarhead, personally. I think those are the hardcores, right? You guys do more, you guys experience more, they send you in first. That's my personal, right? You guys go in.
That's been the legend, and in many cases the actual case.
And you guys get more training, or your training might be harder than what mine is per se, and mine is harder than the Air Force.
Yeah, I think what probably one of the distinctions that you're probably addressing is that everybody will qualify with a rifle. They will be a basic Marine knowing infantry tactics and have gone through infantry training at one point or another after boot camp. after that infantry training, whether it be at Camp Lejeune on the East Coast or Camp Pendleton on the West Coast, you go to your occupational specialty school or your OJT, on the job training, whatever that might be. The comm guys went to comm school. I was in motor transport, so I went to a motor transport school on how to drive a tactical vehicle, maintenance, those kinds of things. And the infantry guys, they went to a little more infantry training. But you came out as a basic rifleman, knew which end of the gun was working properly, how to take orders, what a squad all those basic kinds of things. So there was nobody, even though if your MOS was a cook, you were still a basic Marine that was expected to, if necessary, pick up a rifle or a weapon, know how to operate it, and know what to do and how to take orders.
So your Marine basic training was just that. It wasn't infantry Marine is something else, right? That was an extra training?
Let me put it this way. Boot camp prepared you for the rest of it. Okay. It made you individual, to be physically and mentally tough, and then everybody went to infantry training. The basic we called it ITR, Infantry Training Regiment. Again, Lejeune or Pendleton on either coast. If you were an infantryman, MOS, as we used to call them, 0300s, they would go on to other kinds of training. Like if somebody was an infantryman and they were going to be designated as a mortarman or an automatic weapons person, they went for that training. My training as a motor transport driver was, after my basic infantry training was over, I went to a motor T school.
Okay.
So.
Thank you for clearing that up. Okay. All right, so we finished. I guess I just wanted some clarification as to how Marines do it.
I can only attest to how it was done when I was in. I think it's changed. It may have changed, it may not have. It depends. Because once you finish boot camp and basic infantry training, you either went to your assigned unit where you got on-the-job training, whatever that was, or you went to a school, like comm school or maintenance. Okay. Maintenance schools, things like specialty schools like that. Or if Marines that were then assigned to what we refer to as the Air Wing would then go to their avionics school or their aircraft maintenance school or whatever that specialty was. I think that's pretty much still the case now, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so thank you for explaining. I appreciate that very much. I'm sure me and some civilians do too. What happens after your basic? Where do you go?
You get assigned to a unit, and I got assigned to a Marine Corps Air Station El Toro in California in January of 66. Arrived there at the receiving barracks, and a number of us then got assigned to various units around the airbase. It was because of my MOS being a truck driver and having some certification in that. Assigned to Marine Air Base Squadron 33 at El Toro, and was there until I believe it was September or October of '66 when the unit was asked to give up some folks because they were forming a unit at Camp Pendleton just down the way for a unit to go overseas, and it was called 11th Motor Transport Battalion, and it was an old unit they apparently reactivated and assigned us that designation. And 11th Motor Transport Battalion comprised of 3 companies of 50 trucks. Well, we called them 6x, 6x6, 6 wheels, 6 driving wheels, those kinds of things, of 6x, 5 tons. So 150 trucks there, plus other ancillary vehicles like refuel, like a fuel wagon. Then there was what we called transport company, because I had a license to drive vehicles up to 25-ton capacity, which I got at El Toro. They needed 20. I think it was more like we had 50 semi-tractor trailers that were of the tactical nature, not the semi-tractor trailers you see driving around here, but ones that you could take off-road, those kinds of things. So it was a very large unit, and we formed up at Camp Pendleton in the fall of '66, and went overseas, loaded out, filled up, drove from Camp Pendleton to Long Beach, California, pretty much 24 hours a day, getting all of our gear, all of our trucks, all of our ancillary gear, and the gear of an aviation unit that was going to go overseas as well. Drove all those trucks up to Long Beach and loaded them out on 2 big freighters. So we had a couple of days off, and then I'll never forget this, on December 7th of 1966, December 7th, we got on buses and went down to San Diego, and it was the big adventure. We're going to get on this big gray ship, and it's going to take us across the Pacific, and the 2,300 Marines loaded out on this, the ship, the USNS El-Tinge. The El-Tinge doesn't exist anymore because I looked it up, and it was pretty much cut up for scrap 20, 30 years ago, that kind of thing. So we left for Vietnam. It was a kind of an uneventful trip until we hit a little bit of a storm. Our first stop was in Honolulu. We never got off the ship. We had somebody who had to get off the ship because of a death in the family, and then there was one Marine that apparently, if the rumor was suffering from appendicitis, so we had to let him off. So all we did was pull in the harbor, boat came out, got those 2 guys off, we turned around, and away we went. Our next stop was Christmas Eve in Okinawa. And if you're familiar with the UCMJ, Universal Code of Military Justice, you don't want to miss movement because nobody had any money. There was no place to spend it on the ship, quite frankly. We were given a $20 bill, which we euphemistically referred to as a flying 20. We were allowed off the ship to go into Okinawa, but we had to be back on the ship no later than 1300 the next day, Christmas Day. Well, some of the guys were getting off the ship to stay in Okinawa to go over to Vietnam at some other point in time. I'll never forget, I made it back to the ship. Let's put it this way. Turn loose 2,300 Marines, each possessing $20 or perhaps more. Naha, Okinawa will never be the same. Let's just say that, okay? You coop them up long enough and stuff happens. But I'll never forget, I'm up on the rail. I got back early with some of my buddies I hung out with, and down this long pier, this pier must have been 5 football fields long. They're standing there with their watch like this, and these Marines are just hauling ass all the way down the pier because they did not want to miss movement and answer to anybody because you weren't on the ship by 1300. Everybody made it back. Unbelievable. Truly unbelievable. Nobody was left behind. So then in the rough part of the ship through the South China Sea, some of the folks that were not used to riding on a ship or the pitching and rolling and those kinds of things, they didn't fare too well. But they wound up being okay. Cramped quarters, not very nice, but we knew it was going to be over. So I believe it was the 29th of December of '66, we pulled into Da Nang Harbor, and of course we were all John Wayne psycho, ready to go, and okay, you know, let's get this done. Some landing craft pulled up alongside our boat, or our ship, the El-Tinge, and we filed off down there. We had all of our gear on our backs, rifles, the whole 9 yards, and started going into Da Nang. And we went from the harbor down the river, the Hung River, I believe it was called. We came up to this public landing spot, and the landing craft pulled in here and said, okay, everybody out. Well, there's people on bicycles, like, okay, where's the bad guys? Aren't we supposed to hear, where's our trucks? What's going on here? And there happened to be a school across the street from this landing spot, and these young Vietnamese kids, male and female, came out of school, and they were looking at us, we were looking at them, so they came over to us, and we were just kind of hanging out waiting for the trucks to pick us up to take us to our compound. And one of the guys in our unit, Rivera, he was Puerto Rican, so he could speak Spanish. I said, hey, Rivera, speak some Spanish to him. Just see him. So he spoke a little bit of Spanish, and they looked at each other, they looked at him, and they got on their bicycles and took off. So that was just kind of a little funny. So we didn't know quite what to expect. But anyway, we got picked up, went to our compound. It was in good shape because a tank company had moved out from there to another spot. So we took over their compound. So the next few days was getting organized. The trucks were there. We had to go get them off the ship, and they were parked someplace down in the harbor. And it was more organizational than anything. We're finally in company. Then we had to man some posts at night, and the bunkers were already in place. We got our instructions on, here's your area over here, here are your orders, here's what you can and can't do, because there were villages around us on one side. And the other side was good-sized hill. Over here is a good-sized hill, and then there was a pass over to what we referred to as Indian country, where the bad guys were supposed to be. So it got settled in, and life was pretty good. The chow wasn't too bad, and then it came around. I guess we were there for 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. Then our orders came in that we were going to go form a convoy, and we had to go over to what was called Red Beach, the Force Logistics Command, FLC, which was a big Marine supply base, not too far away from where we were. Get loaded up with, mostly food supplies more than anything else, a lot of ammo, artillery shells, artillery powder, and came in big canisters. And because we were semi-tractor trailers, we carried a lot of stuff, and there were probably 15 or 20 of us. So we got loaded up one day. The next morning we took off, and we could only go so far because the engineers had to sweep the roads for mines, because we were going to be on dirt roads, and we were going to go to this place called Anwha, A-N-H-O-A. Anwha was where a Marine infantry unit, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, or 2-5, as we called it, had their base camp, and also part of the base camp was a metal mat airstrip. And so they needed, one of our guys was driving the fuel truck, because this base was not only used by 2-5 to do operations all over the place down there, they also used it for the helicopters out of Da Nang, Marble Mountain Airfield in Da Nang, to fly down there to take the grunts into the mountains, but they needed a refueling spot. Well, they had these large pits. They had a big bladder, a big gas bladder, aviation gas laying in that they were able to pump into to fill up and then pump out of to refuel the helicopters. So the helicopters had a refueling spot on the way back. The total distance from where we were in Da Nang to Anwha couldn't have been more than 25 or 30 miles, but it was an all-day trip. And we had to wait for the roads to get swept by the engineers, because the bad guys would place mines in there. And on our first trip down there, the lead tank, I was in the 2nd or 3rd truck from the front, because I had the assistant convoy commander with me, and the convoy commander was ahead of us, and the tank ahead of us hit a mine and blew the track off. So he was dead in the water. Well, that was not a good spot to be in, because these trucks, pretty high profile, we were out in the open. Shortly after we got off the trucks, we heard gunfire. Some of the grunts that were with us that rode on top of the truck saw some activity they didn't like. And so I grabbed my weapon, jumped out, and ran to get in a ditch off to the left. Assistant Convoy Commander, Sergeant Jackson, grabs the M62 machine gun, climbs out, comes around here, and puts about 6 rounds 10 yards to my right into the ditch. He took it off safe too soon. And he came out, he thought he'd kill me. He said, "Foltz, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." He said, "Did I hit you? Did I hit you?" I said, "No, I didn't. You're fine." Just scared the crap out of me. So he said, we didn't shoot, we didn't fire a shot. The tank let a round go, and apparently the bad guys went away. They put a new track on a section of track on the tank, and then we went the rest of the way, and we spent overnight down there with 2-5. And so that was kind of interesting. And on the way back, after we delivered our loads, we brought some stuff back. There was apparently a coal mine or something going on down in the Anwha area that we would bring back to the Da Nang area for the Vietnamese. Because we were sort of out away from the big air base at Da Nang, we had to drop this stuff off, this coal at an electric plant inside the city of Da Nang. So we drove our trucks around there, dropped it off, They unloaded it, and we came back around on what was then, at Da Nang, there was the Marine side and the Air Force side. Well, on the Air Force side, those guys had better stuff. And we discovered real quickly that there was an E-Club on the way back. Well, we were only permitted to have 2 beers a day, if we get any at all. So the Assistant Convoy Commander Jackson said, let's pull over here. So he walked in. He's dusty, tired, just looking like John Wayne. Finally, he comes out and he goes, "Come on, boys, let's go have a beer." He talked to the club manager. The club manager let us stop there. And we did that for 3 times. We thought, hey, this is pretty good duty. We just drive, spend overnight, come back, sneak a couple of beers in, we're good to go. Probably about the 3rd or 4th trip back, and we were doing this, is this E-Club on the Air Force side was right next to there was the street or the road, and then across the way was a couple of hangars where there was a couple of C-130s parked. Second or third, the 3rd or 4th time we came back, the wind got taken out of our sails pretty hard because we saw some metal caskets with flags over them. That this is not good. We finished our beer, got back in our trucks. Nobody said a word. We got back, changed clothes, took a couple showers. Dead silence. It played on everybody, at least the ones that saw that. And so it kind of came home to us that not fun. This is real. So that was one experience, and so we were on the lookout from then on. One of the other aspects of 11th Motors and their job, we had to go up north to Fubai and Wei City and up to Quang Tri and up near the DMZ. We would go on convoys up there, big convoys where we had air cover all the way, big convoys, like 100 trucks, because they need resupply pretty badly. They can only get so much stuff into Dong Ha and get it offloaded for the guys at Khe Sanh, Dong Ha, Con Thien, those kinds of outposts up there. So they needed a much larger volume supply route, and that's the role that we played. One of the interesting aspects of going from Da Nang to An Hoa was we had to cross a river. And the Navy supplied us what they called Mike boats. And we would have to back our trucks on. This is why it took so long, is not only the roads get swept for mines, but we had 2 trucks at a time on Mike boats, and we would have 15, 20 truck convoys. So they would have to cross this river, come back, pick people up, take them across, and it was a long, arduous process. So that was that. The other interesting story about An Hoa was early on one of our convoys, we pulled out onto the airstrip and had to put our trucks around the perimeter, and they couldn't unload us until the next morning. And a lieutenant pulled up in a Jeep, talked to our convoy, went lieutenant to lieutenant and so forth. So I'm looking down at this Jeep driver. He was driving the lieutenant around. And I looked at him and said, "Is your name Nevins?" And he goes, "Yeah, who are you?" And I took off my helmet, and it was a guy from my hometown. Unbelievable. A year behind me in school, one classmate of my brother's, just in the middle of fricking nowhere, Nevins shows up. And so he rode back with us a couple of times, and then he rotated back to the States, and so he got to go, he took it upon himself to go see my family and my fiance and my fiance's family, and said everything is okay. Anyway, that was just, anyway, so then later on in 66, I've lost track of time, 67. Sometime in either May, June, or July of 67, I was assigned to go to work in another unit. And it was called a Civic Action Group, Civic Action Group. And it was a group of Marines, both in Chulai and up north in Fubai and in Da Nang, that put 16, 17 Marines and a Navy corpsman in a village, in a part of the pacification of the countryside, to make it safe for the people, the good guys, to work their fields and live a normal life. And then ostensibly we were supposed to be training what they called at that time popular forces, or PFs. Well, the popular forces were about worthless because they were citizen soldiers. It was their village. We were going to help them with some of the heavy lifting. We were going to run what they called med caps. Our Navy corpsman would, every morning he'd say, okay, anybody sick, anybody get hurt, he would take care of them and see what they could do to let them know we're on their side, that these big Americans coming in were just not going to take over. And so we would run some patrols out into the countryside. And interesting about that, one of the guys that I knew that went with me, and this was a little village south of Da Nang called Nui Kim Son. And he had the watch early on in the evening at one night, and he was in a bunker, a 2-story bunker that overlooked a creek, and then the rice paddies are out here. And I can't remember whether, I guess it was later on that night, he came back to our hooch where we were sleeping, and he said, "You're not going to believe what happened." And his name was Cloyda. He was from some small town in western part of Washington State, Yakima. It just came, and his eyes were as big as saucers. And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I think I almost got it tonight." And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Did you hear that explosion?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but that's, here, there, and everything, those little explosions." He said, apparently one of the bad guys on the other side of the creek threw a grenade, tried to get the grenade into the bunker, and it hit the top there was sandbags, and then there was a board, and apparently this grenade hit the top of the board and bounced back into the creek and exploded. And so he came close. I don't know whether he made it home or not. I'm pretty sure he did. And then I got transferred back from one of those civic action platoons or CAP platoons back to the headquarters group in Da Nang. And my roommate, Alton Thomas Jr., the biggest, meanest guy. He was an athlete. We'd have pickup football games, and he would run through a wall. He was from the inner city, and he found a home in the Marine Corps, I think. One of our units south of Da Nang, one of our platoons got overrun one night, and I think it was during the Tet Offensive, 68. This was in March of 68. Our the group commander, the group XO, a Major Burke, big, tall, strapping Major Marine, right through and through, came in and said, I need you to get a 6x. Echo 6 just got overrun last night. We need to go pick up some bodies. That's how blunt it was. So Alton, his nickname was Sweet Pea. Sweet Pea and I got a truck, got armored up. We went out, and we didn't have to go very far south of Da Nang to pick up these guys. What the bad guys had done is overrun our position, took them out near the road, put them in a ditch, lined them up, and shot them in the back of the head. So they took their dog tags. So we had to take the bodies to 1st Med Battalion, not the mortuary, but 1st Med. And this doctor went nuts. Major Burke walked in, and he said, put the bodies over here. Well, it was the intake, where they bring the wounded in. And this doctor was just adamant. He says, you can't bring those dead people in here. And Major Burke looked at him straight in the eye, and he says, I have orders from General whatever. And you check with your people, because these guys need to be identified, because they took their dog tags. And we kind of knew who was there, because we knew who those people were. 30 days later, Sweet Pea was killed. He and a bunch of others were going out. They were setting up a new civic action platoon or CAP platoon out. I can't remember exactly where it was. And he was driving one of the trucks, and he was fearless. And what the bad guys did is they set off a mine that blew up the truck in the front, which he was in, and there was nothing left of the truck. It was a huge explosion. Then once the other 4 or 5 trucks in line stopped, they blew up the one on the back. And of course, all hell broke loose after that. So I had to clean out his locker and inventory his gear, and that was it. So 30 days later, he was KIA, and along with a whole bunch of others. Well, that was 7 guys in one day. That was kind of tough. That was real tough. As a matter of fact, the chaplain came over from 3rd Marine Air, well, we call it 3rd MAF, but Marine Amphibious Force came over and we had a service. And I still have the program from that service in my stuff today. So it was, those were some of the not so fun. Some of the other funny stuff, I shouldn't say funny stuff, it's interesting. When I was with 11th Motors, we were assigned to take 2 or 3 trucks down to this infantry unit south of Da Nang, and the main road out of Da Nang to the next big city down the way was Highway 1. Go down Highway 1, you come to this ville here, you turn right, and you go back into a mile or 2 back into this area, and you'll find, I can't remember what the unit was. It was an infantry unit of some kind. And this was 10, 11 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, turn down there, things are bopping along, it came around a corner, and the engineers are coming the other way, sweeping the roads for mines, because we'd gone on an uncleared road, probably for a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile. So I stopped the truck, sat there, thought, oh crap, here we are. We're sitting out in the middle of nowhere. We're just got this high profile, nothing but rice paddies around us. Do I get out of the truck? I know I can't move. I can't back it up. I could back it up because we just came through there and we didn't hit a mine, but I can see the guys up ahead. Finally, the guy sweeping the road came up, lieutenant came up to us and says, what the hell's wrong with you people? I said, sir, it's 11 o'clock. I thought you'd had it cleared by now. He said, well, we had a little action down here last night. We got a kind of a late start. So he said, now the rest of the road is clear. You can go back. Well, I would hope so. So just nothing happened. It was just not funny, but interesting on how those things happen. So, questions?
Yeah, I have quite a few. You said quite a lot. So I'm just going to go way back and start with the questions.
Sure.
What was the value of $20 then?
Oh my gosh. In Okinawa, $20 was all-night entertainment. Well, some people spent it probably, I don't know about me. I don't know whether I had any money left over or not. But I probably didn't. I don't think very many people did. But you didn't get paid back then. You just had it credited on your pay record. If you did get paid in country, and when I say in country, that means in Vietnam, you were given what they called them MPCs, a monetary payment coupon or something like that, so that your greenback dollars wouldn't create a black market with the Vietnamese and so forth and so on, because American currency was highly valued. Well, it didn't really make any difference whether you gave them a greenback or an NPC. There's still a black market, and so that's what we had. The other fun story is one day I was over at what was called Liberty Hill PX, Liberty Hill PX. It was on the Marine side, up on the kind of a side of a hill, not too far from 1st Marine Division headquarters. And we came in from the field and we had to stop by the PXE to get cigarettes or soap or something like that. And I'm standing in line to pay, kind of like at a Walmart, and the cashiers were these young Vietnamese ladies that they hired, civilians. And so I'm standing there waiting my turn, and I turn around, and about 3 or 4 people in back of me is a guy from my hometown. Not the other guy, not Nevins, but Gardner, Phil Gardner. Not Phil Gardner, Phil was Rich Gardner. Phil was his brother. I said, Phil? And his nickname back home was Popcorn for whatever reason. I said, Popcorn, is that you? And he goes, Foltz, is that you? What the hell are you doing here? Well, he was in the air wing, and he'd flown in on a C-130 from Okinawa, and he was going to only stay a couple of days or whatever the hell they were doing there, and then fly out. So another small world story.
Okay. So you said that chow wasn't so bad.
It was okay. If you were hungry, you were going to eat it.
Okay. So was that over the whole tour that it was okay, or was it just when you first got there?
First got there was a little bit of adjustment. C rations is what we ate. You guys probably had MREs, but these were C rations that were probably left over from the Korean War, so they were okay.
Okay.
It was all right.
All right. And you mentioned cigarettes, so you smoked because
At that time, yes.
Because everyone did, and
everyone did.
That's
it was the 60s.
Okay.
Good, bad, or otherwise.
All right. All right. E-Club, is that an enlisted club?
Yeah, the enlisted club, yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, going back, chosen for your job, did you pick to be a driver, or did they pick that for you?
In boot camp, you were given some aptitude tests and so forth and so on. So I did all the tests and said, you're a 35-31, you're going to the air wing, you're going to be an avionics guy, you're going to go to infantry school, you're going to be a grunt. One of our guys in our recruit platoon was assigned to Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. And how he pulled that off, I don't know. It was pretty cool. I don't know whatever happened to him, of course, but or even for any of the guys. I've gone. There's a website out there called the Virtual Wall where you can put in somebody's name and find out if they're on the wall. If they're not on the wall, they made it home. That's how I was looking at it. There was a young man that worked for me in the motor pool there at Second CAG, Civic Action Group, back at the headquarters. His name was Showerman. I can't remember his first name, but he was from a small town in Oregon called, not Forest Park, but Forest, it's a suburb of Portland. And had to clean out his locker and inventory his gear because he didn't come back. He was out doing something, resupplying one of our platoons out in the countryside and hit a mine. And so that was another one. But out of my group, that was the only 2 casualties that we had. I just remember Showerman. I want to say his first name was Albert. God, it's just awful. If I don't think of these things periodically, I lose it. But anyway, Forest Grove, Oregon, suburb. Anyway. So that's how we got picked. You just take aptitude tests and whatever they happen to need. If you were smart enough, you got this job, or if you got your recruiter to say, I'm going to keep you safe, I'm going to put you in the air wing. You're going to be an aircraft mechanic, you're going to work in avionics or whatever the heck it is. You're going to be a firefighter at an air base. That's how it was done. That was how it was done back in those days.
Okay. How long was your job training?
After boot camp, went to Camp Pendleton, probably 3 to 4 weeks, just learning the basics of the tactical vehicles and how to drive them and various other convoys all around the base, off-road, on-road, just getting a feel of what it is you were trying to drive. So.
And did they teach you some basic maintenance?
Yes, first echelon maintenance, making sure the tires there was oil in the crankcase, diesel in the tank or gas in the tank, depending, and not to overload it.
When you were out in Vietnam, you mentioned that were you mostly with the Marine Corps, or did you ever work with other branches?
No, the South Vietnam at the time was divided up into what they called various corps by Roman numerals. There was Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and I believe 5 was the Mekong Delta. But being Marines, we didn't know Roman numerals. We just called it I Corps because it looked like the letter I. And I Corps at that time was exclusively the bailiwick of the Marines. Now later on, closer to later on in the 60s, I think after the Tet Offensive of January of '68, there were some Army units that were brought up north to supplement operations, and because we couldn't do it all. That was but I personally never worked. Well, I shouldn't say that. Let me. We were given equipment nobody else wanted. I can remember our tow truck driver being told to go to this Marine unit over here and bring back this truck that was broken down, and it was stuff that was surplus that nobody else wanted, that didn't run or they couldn't get parts for. So that was our duty. Well, and this is where Sweet Pea and Showerman and I and another guy got to be pretty good at bargaining. We found an Army unit over in Da Nang, down towards Marble Mountain Air Facility, not too far from the R&R Center there at China Beach, and hooked up with this guy. He was from Indianapolis, and he was a rough character. He had access to carburetors, tires, generators, whatever we needed. So we would trade with him. What we would trade with him were either C rations or equipment that he was not entitled to, such as K-bars, a knife, K-bar knife. Never any weapons. But so we set up a little swap meet periodically with those guys. And so one time he took some of us over to his E-Club. Their E-Clubs were just a little bit better than ours. Like a whole lot better. Because they had they had something more than beer, let's put it that way. That was kind of nice. This is how the Army lives. So in answer to your question about do we work directly with, officially no, unofficially on an as-needed basis.
Did you ever meet any of the air cover that covered you?
No.
Okay.
I did see a couple B-52 strikes once. And some foothills not too far from our position, and it was impressive. So I don't know whether it was Navy, Marine, or I think most of our air cover at that time came from either the Marine side or the Navy side off the ships. And the only time I think Air Force participated was the 2 or 3 B-52, what they called carpet bombing back in those days. And they came in from Guam. They would fly from Guam all the way to Vietnam, turn around and go back. And I think that is, from my understanding, and the hands around here can probably testify to this, that's an 8 or 10 hour round trip. It was a long way. And that's what my brother did in Guam, is loaded up and maintained the B-52s that were in Guam that flew to Vietnam and back. And I think, I was there when he was in Guam, but, no direct contact.
I might have some other interviews you want to listen to. I have I've talked to some folks that helped you.
Yeah,
okay.
Could very well be. Although they're getting a little long in the tooth, because I'm getting long in the tooth too. So,
how were you transferred so much? Did you have a lot of rank? Were you super effective?
No, I was an E4, Corporal E4. I don't know why I left 11th Motors to go to 2nd CAG. They needed some motor transport people because they were bringing in this junk stuff from other units. They were broken down, won't run, can't find parts, and they needed some personnel in that motor pool area at 2nd CAG that acted as the headquarters and the resupply to our platoons that were out in the field. And I just think they needed some personnel, and I was one of them.
Okay, you didn't volunteer, you were voluntold?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that sounds like something pretty cool to do.
Okay. You have an excellent memory for some of these things.
There's, unfortunately, well, it can either be a blessing or a curse, but I think certain things you don't forget.
Now, you picked up a lot of ammo
yes.
along the way. Did you frequently use it yourself?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, periodically. As I said, the first convoy we went on, when the tanks blew the tread, the grunts in the back with the other trucks told us where to. So, I never saw anybody, but, fired in the general direction and they kept their heads down. Because as I remember, it was what they would refer to as a command detonated. The bad guys, the North Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong were very expert at taking the junk that we would throw away and building mines. We called them box mines. It would take build a box out of wood with very little metal in it so that the engineers in their metal detector, but then they would take what we called comm wire, from one phone to another, the little black wire, the comm wire. They put all that together and create, and then we learned not to throw away batteries because there's always a little bit of spark left in the batteries. And so they would hide back in the weeds until you got over their box mine or whatever they wanted to blow up, and away they went. One time we crossed the river on the way to Anwa, and one of our guys in the lead trucks stopped his truck and he jumped out. He was from Detroit, and he was a story. I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "I see a wire in the road." Well, it wasn't. What do you mean a wire in there? No, I see a wire in it. He says, "Come on up here." So we stopped. There we are in the middle of nowhere, high profile, nobody around us for miles, just perfect target. So, crap, here we go. So I went up there, and sure enough, there was a wire that ran over here and went out through this rice paddy on top of the dike, not into the paddy, but on top of the dike. And, maybe 50, 100 yards away or something like that, there was this little grove of trees. Oh, crap, now they're just waiting for us to run over it, and then they're going to, like that, and set off the box mine. So we backed the trucks up, called in the engineers, and sure enough, there was a box mine there. And they blew it up in place. Then we had to wait for a dump truck to fill the hole, because the hole was probably a third of the size of this room. So the road was destroyed. So we had to wait for the engineers to bring a dump truck full of dirt, bring it out there, fill it in. That's why it took all day to go 30 miles. So, but, and it turned out one time, the young man, his name was Aguilar. He was from Fresno, California, was on my truck. And we started, some of the guys up front started taking some heat and started taking some rounds. And he distinguished himself by being very brave and getting up on our truck, because on our tactical vehicles, they had what they call a ring mount. There were 3 posts that come up here, and there was a ring mount, and we had a 50 caliber machine gun up on this thing. So he got up on the 50 caliber, and he was able to, because he exposed himself, and he was able to see where the fire was coming from. So he opened up with the 50 caliber and knocked out the bad guys, because they were really pretty close to the people up front. Nobody got hurt, but it was not a good situation. So yes, we did have some encounters with the bad guys where we had to reload here and there.
How did you stay in contact with the folks at home?
Mostly letters, mostly mail, because it was free. And the mail was a little slow, maybe 10 days, 2 weeks. Mail was very important. Very important. This is how you communicated.
And they did keep up with you?
Yes.
All right. Kept your spirits up?
It did keep up. And how that happened, I have the foggiest idea. But they did. Whoever, the guys and girls that were doing I shouldn't say they were girls. The guys handling the mail probably saw the value in them getting mail, so they made sure that, okay, he's being transferred from here to here, we need to make sure it gets forwarded. So mail call was very important.
Wow. How long were you in country total?
In country from December 29th of 66 until August 9th of 68. Now, I did have an interruption at Christmas of 67 when I came home, because the deal was there is if you extended your tour in Vietnam by 6 months, you got 30 days free leave. Well, it just so happened that was when my brother was getting married. It was Christmas time. Why not? I'm going to extend for 6 months. This is working out okay. Well, little did I know that when I came back in the first week or two of January of 68, the bad guys decided to take the Tet holiday as a time to, and so the next 2 weeks after that. So how smart was I? I extended by 30 days so I could come home and get 30 days free leave, go back to Vietnam in country for 6 months or whatever it is. Plus, I was able to get out of the Marine Corps in August and go back to college in September. that was, said, how smart am I? I'm coming back in time for the Tet Offensive. So.
You did okay, though.
So you're asking how long? So a year and a half or so, more or less, total, with the break in the middle.
Okay. You were able to get engaged, though, and...
I'm sorry, say.
You were able to get engaged.
Oh, yeah, and do all that. She did all the work. I'm no longer married to that lady. She's the mother of my children. So I admire her for in many, many ways. But she did all the wedding planning. Of course, men don't do that anyway, do they?
Some don't. Most don't. Most don't.
Yeah, we men typically worked with a guy years ago, not in the Marine Corps, but years ago. He said, "What are you doing this week, Andy?" I said, "Oh, we're going to go pick out China." It's like, I said, "Good luck with that. Been there, done that. It's your turn."
Okay. When you got home, what was coming home like?
We landed, took an airplane from Okinawa, Kadena. By the way, one little sidebar of story about Kadena. I saw my first SR-71 Blackbird at Kadena in 1967, 68, something like that. It was all top secret stuff back then. It was, what's that across the field there? That's not regular. That's not a real airplane. What the hell is it doing over there? And we saw it move, so we got to see that. But we flew out of Kadena nonstop to El Toro and got off the airplane in the nice warm evening and got into some barracks, temporary barracks, until we got all our paperwork so that those that got back into continental U.S. with less than 60 days on their enlistment, we got out early, which was my plan. And so I was officially discharged August 19th, 10 days later. So, came back, got what they referred to as mustered out, and we got paid our combat pay, our back pay, what else? I can't remember all of it, but they paid us in cash. No checks. I remember having a wad of cash this big around. And said, how in the hell am I going to get this home? Well, I divided it up. I put some in both of my socks, because I traveled in uniform, because back then, military and active duty military with uniform could do a space available on civilian airlines if they had a space for us. A few times I got cut some breaks in that regard. But anyway, so I was in uniform, so I put some money into my socks. I put some money various places on my body in case somebody recognized, hey, this guy's got some money, he just got discharged, I know they pay in cash. You know, if some bad guy says, give me your money, I'm going to only get him some. Never happened, but I came home and I'm emptying my pockets and doing all this stuff. I had this big stack of money, and my mom went back to her house. Back at Mom's house, she goes, what are you doing with all that money? I said, that's how I got paid. So then she goes, you better get that to the bank. And I said, you're darn tootin', we better get it to the bank. So anyway, that's in August. I went back to college in the next month, and then the next month in October '68 got married.
What college did you go to?
I went to Otterbein University. It was not a university at that time, but I went to, it was the hometown college up in Westerville. So.
You used your GI benefits?
Absolutely.
Have you used any other benefits?
I bought a house years ago using a VA guaranteed mortgage. Other than those two occasions, I haven't. Now I know I'm entitled to it, and we have a nice VA hospital here in Dayton, but I always felt that I was able to provide for myself, and maybe there were other people that weren't as well off as I, and that it might have been taking their place. Yeah. So.
Okay. You should still sign up, because they are allowed it, the state or government or whatever allots money per person that's signed up.
Yes.
So just by signing up and saying, yes, I'm a vet here, you're providing more money for the vets that do need the services. So please go and sign up at the VA here, okay?
Yes, and as I get older, probably the first thing I'll do is getting a hearing aid, because just getting older, you just can't hear. So that'll be my first benefit. So other than GI Bill, VA guaranteed house, I've left it alone.
Okay. Are you a part of any veteran groups?
No, I used to be. Years and years ago, I joined the Vietnam Veterans of America, the VVA chapter here in Dayton. And I went to a few meetings and was a little disappointed. They weren't necessarily about helping other vets that were having problems of whatever nature. It was basically sitting around and telling war stories. And that's not what I signed up to do. So I was a member for a couple, 3 years, and then after that I didn't renew.
Okay. There are a lot of chapters and things out there now that would allow you to do that.
Yeah, I guess my first experience was not a good situation, so I've never pursued anything else.
Try again, sir.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Did you have any problems adjusting back to civilian life?
In my view, no. In the view of others, perhaps. I remember becoming very angry one time early on when I punched a hole in a wall in our apartment we lived in. I just recall from that time that there was just a lack of understanding on her part, and maybe a lack of understanding what I was probably dealing with at the time. I didn't feel isolated or alone because when I went back to college, there were 4, maybe 5 of us that we kind of found each other, and we had our own little vet center, our own little coffee klatch, so to speak. And that was okay. It was okay. Then everybody graduated and went their separate ways.
That's amazing. The vet center here is truly big.
I'm impressed. I'm very impressed.
Yeah, that's what allows me to do what I do now. So I'm thrilled with it.
Well, but thank you for the clue about if I don't apply for benefits, then it doesn't help others.
What did you do after you graduated college?
I graduated from college. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. That didn't work out very well. I took a job in Cincinnati with a distributor, a company that distributed industrial products. Then I took another job with an oil company that moved me to Western New York and a couple other places around the country. And then eventually, in the early 80s, came back to Ohio, and the marriage ended. I came back to Ohio to follow my kids, and then pursued a business career. And then in 1987, moved to Dayton and found a love of my life again, I guess you could say. And been married 31 years and gained 2 beautiful stepdaughters, and life is good. Never thought I'd wind up in Dayton, Ohio, but what the heck?
Me either.
Yeah, right.
Dayton has a way of recruiting people.
I know. That's the way it is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay. How did your wartime experiences affect your life?
There's not a day goes by. The national anthem has taken on a whole new meaning. People in uniform take a whole new meaning. No matter what their service was, no matter how long it was or short it was. My youngest son, who lives in Grove City, he, right out of high school, he wanted to be a Marine, so he did. He went to boot camp and he joined a reserve unit in Columbus. And eventually they were called up to go to Iraq. And his unit was supposed to go to Iraq and train Iraqi policemen. They deployed, I want to say, in January of 2005, and they got hit pretty hard. They lost, I believe the count was 22 Marines and a Navy corpsman in a short 6-month deployment. Came home to a new baby, my granddaughter Natalie, his daughter Natalie, in September of 2005, and to a big celebration out at Rickenbacker. And it was Lima Company 325, 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines. It's a reserve unit, but again, going back to every Marine's a rifleman, every Marine's a grunt. So they did their part. And I went to a couple of funerals of guys that he served with that he knew pretty well. So it was kind of a little bit of a deja vu for me. But back to your question, is his service, the sacrifice of the guys that he served with, people that I remember. Not a day goes by I don't think about him or any of those guys. Yeah.
Where did he serve? I'm curious.
Say again.
Where did he serve?
Oh, my son served in a reserve unit in Columbus.
No, in Iraq. I was in Balad back then.
It was, I'm going to say Haditha. There was a dam there. One of their jobs was dam security, and they ran patrols around Haditha, if I recall. So that's where that was.
Okay.
Does that help you? Fix where it was. It wasn't Fallujah, but it was Haditha. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that particular place. I was in a big city.
Okay.
So, but same time. Wow.
Yeah. If I recall, it was a dam complex, part of one of the big rivers over there, and dam security and running patrols and security around the dam.
So sorry for the loss of any soldier or Marine or military personnel.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some life lessons that you've learned from your military service?
Never take anything for granted.
Absolutely.
Never take anything for granted, and I did one. You want to try to pay it back or pay it forward. I'm never sure what this was, but I was on vacation in Florida a couple, 3 years ago. My wife and I were having a late lunch in this nice restaurant. And there were 7 Marines walked in. And I don't know what their detail was or whether they were, it didn't look like it was a graveside service detachment, because they weren't dress blues, but so I didn't say anything to them. Finally, I got up and walked over, and the sergeant in charge, I said, "Excuse me, guys, just want to say hello and semper fi to you, and, thanks for your service." And they said, fine, and we chatted for a little bit. So I went back over the table and I said to the waitress, I said, "Give me their check." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Give me their check. And don't tell them. They'll figure it out." She goes, "Well, why would you do that?" And I said, if you never served, you wouldn't understand. I said, they volunteered to put that uniform on. They stepped up. They volunteered. Nobody asked them to do it. They weren't drafted. And there are probably a couple guys in there that were lifers that were going to make a career of it, so let's honor them. My wife said, "What are you doing?" And I told her, and she didn't say a word. She knew what it meant. And the young lady that was serving us, she said, "Now I understand." She started crying. I said, "What are you crying for?" She goes, I just see these guys in uniform and I have no idea. She goes, "You educate." She didn't say you educate. I know a little bit. I know a little bit more than I did before. So I never thought of it as a volunteer. That they asked, "Can I put that uniform on?" "Yeah." "Well, if you put that uniform on, here's what you got to do. You got to prove yourself." And so we left. Thanks, guys.
All right. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or that should be added to this interview?
By the grace of God, I'm glad to be here. The life I've had has been pretty nice. I've been blessed in a lot of ways. And some of the people with whom I served never had that chance. That's why there's not a day goes by I just don't think about a couple of guys with 11th Motors didn't come back. Alton Thomas Jr., Showerman, another guy named Reese, I can't remember his first name or where he was from. Just the faces and circumstances you remember, sometimes the names and the dates just don't come to mind very quickly, but that's all I want to say.
Are you still in contact with some of your fellow veterans?
Not anymore. A few years ago on the internet, I ran into a guy that I served with 11th Motors. He was from Wisconsin, and he and I got along pretty well. He put me in contact with another guy who was on our unit that lived in Kentucky across the river from Cincinnati. I'd lost contact with him, but the guy in Wisconsin, I lost contact with him for a while, and so I called his home. His wife answered, and I said, well, he can't come to the phone right now. I said, well, tell Gary. I called, and he said, well, I don't think he's going to call you back. He was terminal cancer. Oh. So I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to him necessarily. But he and I talked on the phone mostly. And one of the things that he and I concluded, this was his idea, this was his phrase, and I'm going to borrow it, just give him credit. He said he would go to his local VFW post, and there would be all the World War II and Korean guys in there. Oh, you guys didn't win the war. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. Just kind of razz him. And he said, I had to tell him one day, John, he said, they wouldn't let us. They wouldn't let us win. We had every capability of doing it. They wouldn't let us do it because you can't go here. You can't do this. You can't bomb here. Oh, my gosh, dude. And the Tet Offensive turned against us from a public opinion point of view. And I think Gary was right, is they wouldn't let us win. And we could have. I feel especially good about the part about our Civic Action Platoon, having platoons out on the villages, running med caps, running patrols, making it safe for the populace to go about their daily life and not be afraid of us, but try to keep the bad guys out of the villages at night. Pacification of the countryside, and it was kind of the phrase we used at that time. So I feel good about that. Not only serving the country, but also whatever brief time we were able to is bring some peace and tranquility to the people that didn't know. They just wanted rice. I want my 3 helpings of rice a day. That's all I want. I want a farm. We keep my water buffalo. Leave me alone. But that's all.
I had rice today. Okay. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the project, too.
What message would you like to leave for future generations that will hear or view this interview?
We did our best with what we had. Everybody served their time, did their duty the best they could. And if you feel the need to step up, to do the same, good luck to you. Do it. Whatever your motivation is, whether it's patriotic or I'm going to go in and I'm going to come out and I'm going to go back to school and better myself on the GI Bill, or whatever the motivation is, you will be among the few that stepped up and volunteered. Like you.
That concludes our interview with John Foltz. Thank you for your time today and for your military service.
Thank you, Ericka, and thanks for the Veterans Voice.